unfortunately stayed healthy so far, but like it's just
Only
you,
matter-
you,
only
can only,
battery
only
time.
do you can only do what you can do.
My family's in Missouri, that's rural in this county.
Yeah.
Oh, really that bad?
Oh, yeah, just maybe just leave one. Yeah, leave one there and leave one over here in the corner. That way, if anybody wants them, they can squirt. It's poison on them.
So is it an empty seat for now then? Until they
Yeah, they'll point one. I think their goal is more short stuff.
okay. Is there a big change?
Yeah, it's you, and we're after your
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I just have the 3 projects that we talked about.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Hi, Carol. How are you?
So, well,
Wonderful.
he's presenting it, but he's just going to talk concepts. We're doing a facilities plan that's funded that we want to try to get some direction on where to focus that. So,
Is all your team there? Are they from the Tampa area that you know, or are you going regular?
mostly from around. I mean, we'll have representing the stormwater team that we have. There'll be 3 or 4.
Okay. I hope you don't kill me for this.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm gonna sing.
I'm thinking I would, if it's okay with you, I think I wanted this video call even though I like it in person. I'm so drained and I gotta get so much vacation time and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be 2 hours on the road to you, 2 hours back.
No problem.
And
Yeah.
I would just like seeing it.
I mean, we can video you in.
Okay, so if that's okay.
Yeah.
It might go a little bit quicker.
No problem. You can.
I can just change my reservation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll call in too then.
Yeah, you might do
Because Morgan was calling anyway. No one was
driving.
No one was
in.
farther.
Okay.
No one was traveling.
If they were, I
me,
probably
except
would
Leslie
be.
was here anyway. So.
Yeah, I do enjoy the in-person just
Yeah.
because it helps us progress things a lot quicker, but I don't think our agenda is too lengthy. So.
It's not. We had basically we had a couple out here. We had like 2.5 hours, but just because that's the time we had, I have to be back for a Lake County Water Authority meeting tomorrow.
So I'm sure we'll probably grab it all.
Yeah. You can do that. Yep. No problem. Yeah. No problem. Yeah, I think you were on the agenda just so we had spent a little time talking about the CUP.
Yeah, I do
CUP
want to
and
get direction on that.
scheduling of all the drinking water stuff.
Guess I'll just get them.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, sorry about that.
No worries. We aim to please. We can accommodate that. I went over there. I was over there last week on Friday, and I'm just not in the habit of like calling to make sure somebody's going to be there. But I showed up. I was there Thursday night. My son was over there, and then Friday morning I was going into the office. I'm like, there's nobody here. I'm not there enough to justify having a key lock on the door. Anybody home? So it was a bust, but no worries. There'll be people there tomorrow for sure.
Oh, I got this.
I know. No full house today. So what I tell people is like this is the market like pre-COVID. Like this is our normal thing. This is what a normal market should be. Obviously the last few years, everyone has this whole buyer rates and the sellers at a premium. But this is like the actual way the market should be.
Pull up there, and there's a lot of cars in the parking lot. There's a lot of people here. Okay, what's going on?
Yeah, a lot of fun for us. Well, the rates are high.
I probably don't need one. I did have one.
$300,000 house at a 7.5. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's okay. I can.
Well, yeah, but the price was also
I can memorize
a
this.
fraction.
This was
Yeah.
short.
So,
CUP stormwater grant.
yeah, because historically, like even 10, 11, it's like
Sometimes you never know. Like the short ones have a sleeping
Yeah.
dragon in there somewhere. You hear So I
You
don't
had
know
land.
if I need to say anything on
You had land? You had a lot of land?
Yeah, so still might be two sites or whatever. I don't know how big the big whole thing is.
It's all the same. It's running 100 miles an hour, but it's all the same thing. How about you? Same?
I have my team. I actually think that each year, one of my friends has two and a half.
The other
So then I refined it right after that, and I got a 3, so I'm like married to the house. We don't have a fifth. Yeah, I can't win.
Have a who? A fifth. Plead the fifth? You're throwing your name in it, right? You're throwing your name in, right?
Yeah, so the appraisal, usually the things that barely out, you can make that for yourself too. And if it does, then it has to be natural.
They'll do everything. That there.
But it has to be something like you had to use it. There's like an electrical hazard. That's usually what the appraisal falls on.
But are you really?
Easy now, easy.
Missing Alan yet, huh?
He's coming.
He's on his way?
Yeah. We'll get some.
18-wheeler here? Park it right out front there.
Right?
Carol. It's much more sense. So just be ready for it. The first time you do it.
Yes, I am.
Well, it is much more sensitive.
Oh, yeah, he's got it working.
All correct dials.
Just, oh, yeah.
It may go screeching like crazy, so I'm ready to jump if it does.
Well, the people online will appreciate it.
Testing. You guys can hear me now.
I'm gonna miss the first concert.
All right, well, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Let's see. I got both my boys are gone. Don't do the prayers. I'll do it real quick. Thank you, Jesus, for a wonderful day, and thank you for taking care of all the people in Montverde, and please give us your guidance and knowledge and courage to move forward. Amen. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hartle. Councilmember Morganelli.
Here.
Vice Mayor Womack.
Present.
And Mayor Weincoop.
Here. All righty. Okay, let's move on here. And I want to go ahead and we'll open up with the discussion of the CUP, which is a conditional use permit for our water, and we have an invited guest. And if you'd like to come up and introduce yourself.
Good evening, tall person here. Good evening, everybody. My name is Leslie Duma. I'm a senior technical leader with Woodard & Kern, and I am the one who's helping prepare your CUP application renewal.
Great.
All right, so consumptive use permitting your CUP application, CUP permits. Oh, sorry, next slide. Not having a clicker. I forgot, sorry. Okay, so a consumptive use permit, I'm just gonna kind of set the baseline here. It's typically 20 years in duration. It's required when you meet any of the 3 conditions that you see there. The main one being the average annual daily withdrawal is greater than or equal to 100,000 gallons per day on an average annual basis. The permit is required to be modified or renewed when the duration of the CUP needs to be increased, so when you're at the end of your 20-year term or whatever the term is. If you're going to increase the consumptive use allocation, or if you're going to add withdrawal points and/or sources of withdrawal, or any combination thereof.
And Leslie, real quick, just I think everybody knows this. So the consumptive use permit is for our potable water system, so the our drinking water, what we're allowed to pull out of the upper Floridian aquifer. Just so everybody understands that.
So next slide. All right, so your CUP. So we started off, your permit expired or was about to expire. So we started off with a pre-application meeting with St. Johns River Water Management District. And they're the entity, the Water Management District, that issues your CUP. And the pre-application meeting is a typical step that is done. And that was followed by the actual preparation of the application, which we then, for the renewal, which we submitted in February of 2024. Then they reviewed it and they issued what they call a request for additional information, or RAI. So the Water Management District basically sent us back a letter outlining things they had questions on, or additional things that they were, information that they wanted. In May of 2024, we submitted a partial response. So basically, if you think about the 10 items as a checklist, we were knocking them off piece by piece, and as they were getting done, we were submitting them to St. John's just to demonstrate that we were making progress forward, and also to get feedback from them on certain items that we were submitting. We did a second partial response in November of 2024, and at present, we have until June of 2025 to respond to all of their requests. Next slide. All right, so the next two slides outline the 10 items that St. John's River Water Management District requested additional information on. The ones with the red check marks have been completed. The ones with the red dots are ones that are currently in process, and the ones without anything on them remain to be done. So on this particular slide, what you can see is that we completed modifications to Form E. Form E is the form that does all the projections for your populations and for your demands, and basically demonstrates it estimates what your future demands are going to be through the 20-year planning period. So they wanted us to modify what we did to match your EN50s, and the first thing we had to do was get the final EN50 submitted, and once that was done, we updated that form. Item 3, which was also done, which was getting them all to sign developers agreements. And item 5 is what's called an ACGIP, or an Annual Conservation Goal Implementation Plan. And that's something required on the Central Florida Water Initiative, and we completed and submitted that. In progress still is Form E, and that was because we had to go back and forth with them around what the basis of the population projection was going to be. We ended up using the CFWI projections for population. So that's been completed, but has not yet been resubmitted to them. And then we started on the work to demonstrate compliance with the CFWI's, the Central Florida Water Initiative's, mandate or goal of everybody using a gross GPCD, or gallons per capita per person per day, goal of 115 GPCD. So that's ultimately CFWI wants to give you that amount of water. That's your quote-unquote allocation per person per day for Upper Floridan aquifer withdrawals. Currently, well, so you were using, up until the recent development started, you were using somewhere on the order of 90 GPCD, but with the recent developments with Willow Ridge and the irrigation that's associated with it, it's shot up. And I can pull those numbers if you want specific numbers. Item 6, I'll get to in a moment as we talk about kind of next steps. And so on the next slide, we also gave them an updated dedicated water conservation plan. So that would be the plan that we prepared for you in conjunction with Paul here, and it outlines the actions that they would expect you to implement. And we can talk more about that if you'd like. We also submitted the form that is a comprehensive water audit and your flow meter accuracy documentation as well. And then I will talk about 10 as well in the slide that we'll be coming to later about what remains to be done. All right, so we created a couple of new documents that we've submitted to St. John's, and that includes, as I mentioned, both the annual conservation goal implementation plan and the water conservation plan. So the water conservation plan is St. John's version of the conservation plan, and the ACGIP is the CFWI's version. So they're basically the same documents. We just have to send them in two different forms. I don't know. This is what they ask, so I do it. We also, as I mentioned before, submitted a comprehensive water audit on the form that they required, as well as the flow meter calibrations on the forms that they require. And the next slide. All right, so going forward, your projected demands, which we'll cover in a moment, definitely exceed what your current CUP is. So, and we'll cover that in a moment as well. But as we think about how what we're going to put in terms of our request for additional potable water from the Upper Florida Aquifer, we have to think about a couple of the expectations that are out there, especially around the Central Florida Water Initiative. And there's two key ones there. The first is that the CFWI, I'll use the term mandates, that there's no additional Upper Floridan water extractions without a good justification as to why you need those. And by justification, I mean not just that your demand's growing because your population's growing, but also demonstrating that you've taken every measure that you can to find an alternative water supply to offset non-potable uses of your potable water supply, AKA offset your irrigation water, for example. And then the other expectation too is that every entity who has a CUP within the CFWI is working towards and demonstrating yearly progress towards a gross per capita daily water use rate of no greater than 115 gallons per day. So again, that's their expectation, is that or what they'll give you is 115 gallons per capita per day. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's talk about what your population is looking like. So again, there's a couple different bases of populations that they will allow you to use, like the US Census or BEBR or CFWI's populations to estimate what you think your projected population will be through the 20-year window, in your case 2044 for the application, 2045 for practical purposes. And so in going back and forth with St. John's River Water Management District, we agreed to use the CFWI population numbers. They're pretty much all on parallel in terms of build out. It was just kind of how the build out, what the growth rate was going to look like. And the growth rate's actually off because of all the development that you have coming down the pipeline. So your projected population in 2045 is going to be 3,922 persons. But when we do the CUP application, we only have to do the demand calculations for water that is coming from the Upper Floridan under your CUP. And because a portion of your population is being served finished water that you're purchasing and conveying from the city of Oakland, we have to take back out that population from the overall numbers. So when we adjust it to remove those that are receiving the Oakland finished water, your population that is being served under your CUP is 3,706.
Leslie?
Yes.
Just to clarify here, we're not just talking about population within the town limits, but everywhere within your utility service
Yes,
area.
exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Yes, it's within your service area. And because what's happening is you're having these new development units coming on, right? We have to make some assumptions about how many people are going to live in your units. And we used a 2.8 persons per household approximation, and that's based on your current population. All right, and so then we take that number and we translate that into demands. Now, I've been slicing and dicing your numbers in two different ways, but what the basis for estimating what your future demand was going to be is that we took what your projected population is going to be. We assumed 90 gallons per capita per day for indoor residential water use. Then we assumed, and there's a formula that we use based on evapotranspiration of how much outdoor irrigation each unit would use. And then we also added on water based on your past demands for, and your billing records for commercial, for institutional, for, and what I'm just going to term other waters. So waters, the waters that the developers are taking from your hydrants for dust control, for example. So we added, and then you have 5 parks that are metered, their irrigation's metered, and all that gets rolled into figuring out an approximation of what we think your future demand is going to be in terms of water. So at present, your current production is 97.71 million gallons per year. The projected for 2044, because that's the 20, we started this application in 24, so it's 20 years from that. We estimated that your demand, it's assuming that all water that's being served by the town, potable and non-potable, for whatever the use is going to total 212.39 million gallons per year. However, that number does not include an estimate of the amount of water that you're using that is not metered, but for irrigation purposes. And we will add that in later on, just in some of the next couple slides. For comparison purposes, your existing CUP is 102.56 million gallons per year. So in a nutshell, you are currently under your CUP, but when all your population, when all your development that is pending is completed and the populations are there based on our estimate, you're going to be over by, 110 million gallons per year. All right, next slide. No, this is, yeah. Okay, so hit the first button. All right, so kind of escalated. So what we did then is we took that number, that 212, and we added in an estimate of your non-metered irrigation. And what that came out to is that you are going to have a total projected demand based on all the water we could think that you guys are going to be using in your service area. You're going to have a demand of 240 million gallons per year. Next. All right, so now if we assume that you get your allocated supply of 115 gallons per capita per day, as the CFWI is wanting you to work towards, that means that they are, we're going to use the term pre-approving, that's my term, that you can pump 156 million gallons per year from the Upper Floridan for potable water uses. So that means that you still have 84 million gallons per year of water demand that's going to be needed, right? Okay, so now we say, okay, of that 84 million gallons per year, how much of that is actually non-potable uses? How much of that's actually being used for irrigation purposes? So we estimated that the town's using around 30 million gallons per year for outdoor irrigation purposes. And then hit the button again, please. And that the 2 developments that are putting in separate non-potable systems, that their outdoor demand for irrigation is going to be approximately 37 million gallons per year. So that leaves you about a 17 million gallons per year shortfall. Okay, next button. And then hit it again, please. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to figure out how we can meet that 67 million gallons per year of irrigation water using some other water supply, what they refer to as an alternative water supply. And then we can estimate, or we can try to demonstrate, the 2 CFWI and St. John's, that you will make a concerted effort to conserve the remaining 17 million gallons per year. And that can be done through various programming that you can do. Okay, so going back to work that remains to be done on this application, and as you recall, there were a couple things in process, and then there were 2 items that we've not yet started. All right, so first of all, this, St. John's River Water Management District is requesting that all the developers' wells be included in your CUP. And that's kind of, because right now they're not in there, and so that bumps up your demand numbers. And we have to decide, are we going to do this, are we not going to do this, and how do we manage that particular piece? Then we need to figure out, and one of the requirements is we have to do an analysis and a report to the Water Management District on alternative water supplies. So we have to demonstrate that we've looked at them, we've decided which ones are technically feasible, which ones are economically feasible, and make some commitments towards trying to do that. And the alternative water supplies basically fall into 4 general categories. You can either take surface water, which would be in your case like Apopka. you can use a lower Floridan aquifer because the CFWI restriction is only on the upper Floridan aquifer, not the lower Floridan aquifer. You can try to do a stormwater capture and reuse project. And that means then for your stormwater projects, you need to design a capture system and direct it to some kind of cistern or pond or some kind of holding system. And that becomes a little bit more difficult sometimes because it's, you have to kind of time the rain with the rain not happening and what happens if it's dry. And so you kind of have to plan for all of that. One that's not on here is municipal recycled water, and because you don't have a centralized wastewater treatment system, that's not a feasible option for you. And then we could use some kind of combination of those other three remaining feasible options to meet that 67 million gallons per year. So once we kind of figure out what you guys want to do, right? Where do you want to try to meet that or obtain that non-potable supply? We then have to prepare an alternative water supply report, which documents that analysis. It explains when and how, what alternative water supplies you decide you're going to get, when and how you're going to do it, what's the timing, and so on and so forth. And then once we know that, we can then mold that back into Form E, which again is a big table that is all these demands, and we say, okay, this is what the demand's going to be, but this is what's going to be met by alternative water supplies. And then once we know what the alternative water supply is, and we have an idea of when it's going to come online, and how much each one's going to provide, we then do some modeling, and that was the other thing that St. John's was requesting. One of the two items that we've not started is that alternative water supply report and the modeling. And we can't do the modeling until we know what the alternative supply report is, because we basically do numerical modeling of 3 scenarios. It's like, what's the impacts to the environmental resources, like the lake, for example, under your current demands? What would it look like if all your future demands were being met by upper Floridan water? And what would it look like when we bring this alternative water supply on for irrigation purposes, and then the rest is upper Floridan? So once we know the alternative water supply, we can do the modeling, and then we can submit those to St. John's. The other thing that's still kind of hanging out there are the 2 conservation plans. We put them together, we've submitted them. Those went in November. Have not heard anything from them. You know, no thumbs up, thumbs downs, but I'm not going to push that subject with them right at the moment. All right, next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned before, again, there's really these 4 alternative water supply options. The recycled water one, as I told you, is not really a feasible option for you. But the pros and the cons, the lower Floridan well is a good alternative, but it's expensive. Mascot recently put in a lower Floridan well, and it turned out their lower Floridan well groundwater quality was actually better than their upper Floridan. So and you're not that far away, and it is possible that you could get the same conditions. There's also not those limitations of CFWI on extractions from the lower Floridan well. So it's a good option for you. They're expensive, but there's also a good potential of getting you money to offset the cost. The Lake Apopka water is another possibility. There was, the storage tank that's going to be at the hills of Montverde that you could use for storing the diverted water. We would need to do some modeling or estimates to evaluate what the impact would be on the lake. And also, just as importantly, we need to figure out where you would divert water from the lake or from a canal leading into the lake. So that would need a little bit of work, but it's a possibility as well, a viable option. Stormwater capture and reuse is going to be a tough one for you. You have very, very sandy soils, so when it rains, the water likes to go bloop down into the ground, and it's really hard to capture runoff if it's not running off, and not to mention the storage issues. So I recommend the focus being on the lower Floridan well as well, or using Lake Apopka surface water as an alternative water supply for non-potable uses. I think that's the last slide. Okay, that's the last slide. Are there any questions?
No, job well done.
I had a question, actually. Can you explain this CFWI model? I'm just curious how they calculate population.
So CFWI is where 3 of them water management districts overlap. So it's St. John's River Water Management Districts, Southwest Florida, and Southern Florida Water Management District. They honestly, I don't know how they came up with their projections, and one of the big issues I have with it is that the biggest problem with the CFWI projections is they've laid out in their documents in their handbook is it does not account for the rapid growth that you're going to be experiencing. On the positive side, at build out, you guys pretty much match up. It's just that they have you spread out more linearly between now and build out, and you're basically going to be building out in the next like 10 years.
And going, why she's saying the build out, when we looked at that, looked at the numbers, we really only have 3 large pieces of property we're going to develop. And obviously one's going through now, one's on the way next month. Then there's still another one hanging out there. So that's really as you kind of look at those numbers. And so I think, you know, as we do this next step, what we probably need for council is really look at some of these alternatives that we have. So as you know, the council has already instructed me to put in the water storage tank that could be used for Lake Apopka, which immediately could start taking care of the parks in the very near future. We got to do a little bit of research on that. It's going to be close to the lake where it wouldn't be overly expensive to run a pipeline. The engineering may be a whole other story of what we need to get from St. John's to get that. So that's one alternative. Council's already instructed me to work on that we're working on. And Scott and his crew, when they did the facility, or they're currently working on the facility plan for our potable water system, and I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, please do, Scott, but their grant team and team have already put a placeholder for the funding for the lower aquifer well into the $13 million grant that we have. So it's not all doom and gloom as you look at this. I don't want you to get that. So we already have a lot of things in play that kind of get us there through the system. And then the other thing we can look at one of the biggest drawbacks is, at least in my mind, I've been asking Leslie and Scott to fight this, but we're getting nowhere with them, is that they want all these small wells that we've had the developers install. They never had in the past had to be a part of your CUP, and now they are. And those are big draws because, you know, we built those separate because they're taking the surface water. It's not the good quality water down below. And it's really, honestly, and I've told them to tell this, it's really short-sighted of DEP to look at that, because what's the point in us taking that bad quality water from the top when it's cheaper for me to run it out of the potable system, because that's what they're creating. But as we look at, for instance, you know, we provide water, the Hills of Montverde is another offsite one that's included in those numbers that we're going to be providing water for, but Lake Apopka Sounds, right where we have 3 of the wells, there is a stormwater pond that's always wet down below, and that probably would be a very cheap, easy hookup, assuming there's no issues doing that. I don't know where the water, if it's just lake water seeping through the ground or just, but there's a stormwater pond there. That would be an easy hookup to take care of those needs over there. So I think we got a lot of good, feasible alternatives. We're at the point we need direction. I guess I will say from you 4 council members of if you want us to pursue all the above and include that, and which seems to be, you know, the lower Floridian aquifer and the Lake Apopka water or other lakes. And when they sent their thing back, you know, it could be all the lakes we can look at. It doesn't necessarily have to be Lake Apopka. It could be 4 lakes. It could be Florence if you want to do some of it out of there. But anyway, I just throw that out to you. We need I guess we need direction at this point, Scott, don't we, so we can finish this up? Does that sound fair?
That, and the other issue was the non-metered irrigation that you guys have in town is being fed off potable, so we'd have to look at a way as well to segregate that off of the potable water system and onto a different system, unless we installed the lower aquifer well, the lower Floridan well, and it turns out to be really good quality, and then you feed all your potable system off of that, in which case you're not limited.
I would say if we did that, it would correct that. We'll feed a
portion.
Probably the smallest portion possible off the lower, because we do got great water here. We don't want to disturb that.
Because then you could shift, because it's a matter of shifting it from one place to another. It's kind of like paper water.
I mean, that's the easiest to satisfy the requirement, but not necessarily maybe the best scenario. So, but it's also the most expensive. So, from working with them for the last 18 months and, probably a combination of that surface water and looking into that LFA seems the most reasonable, in my opinion, to move forward. And Scott, I'll let you state your opinion free of anything I've said.
No, I mean, I think you're right there. I guess the way that we look at this right now, I mean, ultimately you will get a permit that will be the result at some point of a negotiation. And in the old days, and by old days I mean 8 or 10 years ago, before there was this Central Florida Water Initiative, you were dealing with one single water management district. You would put forth everything they're willing to do. The water management district would come back and say, this is everything we need you to do. And if there was a gap in the middle, you got a water use attorney, and they elevated it to legal discussions, and a deal got done. With the Central Florida Water Initiative, what they're trying to do is standardize a lot of this across those different, through the area, because it's all drawing from the same water, even though it's technically 3 different water management districts. And so as they standardize across that, what we're finding is there's less room for negotiation. But still, from our standpoint, we want to at least at a very high level evaluate these and what those costs and benefits would be to the town, because ultimately we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to propose something, and we want to make sure that what we're proposing and what we're negotiating with is what's in the town's best interest. And so we've got to do, there's a little homework that we'll have to do to kind of figure out where that is, and to some extent that still becomes a function of how much water do we have to go find from these other sources. So that's kind of where we are right now, if I added anything to the discussion.
No, I think that's great. And the last thing is the population numbers. I saw some of your faces. It's good to use a higher population number, because more than likely we're going to get a higher CUP withdrawal, even on our upper. So we want to use that, and hopefully we won't be there. We won't have a problem, because this permit we're going for is for a 20-year permit. So we want to make sure we're good for 20 years under worst case scenario, best case scenario, whatever it is, but the higher's a better, and we deal with it now, because this process is very expensive. And it's been going 18 months, and it's from staff time, very intensive on our staff time. For my time I had to deal with, on Patty's, Chuck's time. I mean, we've been going through EN50s for the last 5 years of reports
Billing
and
records,
fixing numbers, fixing this, going through meters, calibrating stuff. It's been a lot of staff time, so we definitely like the high number, just for the fact we can not have to deal with this, or in future administrations will have to deal with this for 20 years.
Yeah, Paul's right. You want to aim higher, on the higher end, so that you have some negotiating room as well if you need it.
Will using that higher number affect us with anything going forward?
As far as
Legal reasons that we're now anticipating this kind of population? I'm just making sure that we're using that.
No, we're not under obligation to go to that population, but kind of we're also looking at the 180 district. For instance, I'll throw YWAM out there. We've had some discussions with them, because they're in our 180. We may eventually at some point take over their well, and that will become a part of our CUP, because they're going to have some development coming on in the future and possibly hook on their line. And it's not a bad thing to have water customers on, because you saw, I think we're the only city probably in Central Florida has ever reduced water rates in history. So, having those customers do help, because it does solve the system out, because the system you're going to run anyway. And we're in a beautiful spot where we get to build a new water tower, a new well's going in, some new treatment stuff is going in. So, we're really, everything is in place where we're fine. As we design that water tank, it's designed for the population that's projected. What we're trying to do is make the CUP match up with all that now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The water that we're pulling from the new well and the new systems, they've been figured into all of the numbers that you presented tonight?
You mean the new Upper Floridan well?
Or the one we're going to build.
Let's start with the lower.
So we don't have a lower, so that would be an option. If we went into a lower, they would give us a separate allocation for that, and that would reduce our upper withdrawals, because if we start to go over, we can hit the upper.
Right.
So separate, that was the key.
Yeah, separate permits.
We can mix and match our options, or do we have to pick one and?
I would encourage you to mix and match
Yeah,
them.
I completely agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we do need to try to separate out from the standpoint of the CUP, because you may end up having 2 actually CUPs, one for your potable use and one for your non-potable use. Because if you roll your non-potable use under your potable CUP, St. John's thinks of everything as being potable. So you want to separate your systems out so that this is potable, this is non-potable, and then this is what they worry about, the potable side.
And one other thing, if I remember correctly, I think it works a whole lot better.
No, we'll go ahead and grab her another, we'll bring you another mic over. We have one.
Yeah, it's a battery.
It's time for new batteries, obviously.
If I remember correctly, back when we were starting off with the butterfly garden and all of that, wasn't there talk about a water retention?
Yeah, so.
Does that help us out here?
Yeah, we took over that $900,000 tank from the hills of Montverde that they didn't
Okay,
build
so
because they ended up paying us to hook to our water system. And I'm actually meeting with the builders out there on Thursday, and then we're going to get a project schedule put together. So you'll see that installed this spring. So that will be something that we'll share, efforts that we're taking with DEP. And then the goal of that water tank would be, yes, to eventually run a line down to Lake Apopka, and then use that to fill up, and that would take care of the butterfly garden, the town park, and eventually, when we get the grant money, we can, we got 20 years to look for some more grant money, we could start running some lines to hook that general area around that, 4 Lakes area, and, second and third, and we could start them on a system.
And then lastly, you mentioned, and again, 4 Lakes, Franklin Pond, Lake Florence, the possibility of maybe pulling something from those?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think all those waterways are possible. They recommend it. Actually, Florence Lake is what they want, but that may be a little.
Where do those fall in, or do they fall in under these options, or do we just get to do that because that's in our town limits?
They would fall under the Lake Apopka
Apopka,
surface
yeah.
water
Yeah,
use.
okay.
Yeah.
So just strike in your mind Lake Apopka and just think surface water
Any
use.
lake, yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
So we can get rid of the storm water. That's not going to work. We can get rid of the recycled water. So you have those 2 options.
Right.
Because we don't have those 2 options really available for us at the town.
Well, from a cost standpoint, which of the options that have been presented, which is the most feasible?
That's what we need to figure out.
So we don't really have a ballpark guess right now? No? Yes?
No.
No? Okay.
I mean, I would throw out, because I could throw out a general number because I'm not knowledgeable enough to throw out a specific, but lower aquifer well, you're probably talking $2 million from
Sounds
start
about
to
right.
finish. Maybe cheaper, maybe more expensive.
Yeah, one data point we have is we did 2 lower Florida and aquifer wells for Mascot 2 years ago. That the collective cost was $1.5 million for those, but they've gone up significantly since then. So I mean, I don't think we're probably not talking $2 million for a well, but $1 million plus probably for the well.
And some of that system, it depends if we use it on the potable side. We do have grant money for that.
Yeah.
And it's possible we may be able to drill the well and put a switch or a separate meter. I haven't thrown this by them where as we eventually put irrigation lines in for the town, that well could service both potable and non-potable with some type of switch that meters it separate, and we get separate CUPs for that. So I think there's some creative things we could do. I know you're probably scratching your head, no, he's crazy. but then also the lake water, we're kind of already setting up now for that lake water with the tank. So, it seems like we could probably shoot for both, and that kind of, again, comes back to my recommendation. They can put them both in there if we get one done and it takes care of the problem, because, the odds of us getting to 4,000 people are probably not very high in Montverde, right? I mean, our 180 district, it might include that, over time, but, immediately that's not going to happen. So we're not going to run out of water anytime soon. So we're not in crisis mode or anything yet. We're just planning for the future.
Several questions for you. I'm going to stick the pig and it's going to squeal here in this room pretty soon, but that's okay. Our municipalities, Claremont, Mineola, and Oakland now are going to sewer systems. What do they capture on their gray water for reusing for their gray water that's being reprocessed against their CUPs? 20%, 40%?
I don't know that. Do you, Scott, recycled water, that they're municipal recycled water?
Because that fits into the system of using what goes down.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head about how much of that they're recycling.
Okay. Well, curious about that. Lower aquifer. We've talked about a 12-inch well. Are there any restrictions from St. John's that says you go with a 16-inch or a 20-inch well?
Nope.
I know the price goes up. I get that. but I'd rather have a bigger and not need it than say, you can't have any more. You're maxed out, and we have no options. We've even kicked around here, I think, the discussion of potentially, they need water, we got it, we'll sell water to you. Are there any restrictions on St. John's and how big you can dig your lower aquifer?
No, it's, you put together your permit and you basically come in and say, this is what we want our preliminary design is. You always start with the preliminary design, so diameter and depth, basically.
And we're gonna be in good shape with storage where we don't need a well to run at full speed, basically, to supply our water when we get this new tank in. Because really, at the end of the day, the new tank we're building is for fire flow, where it comes down to. For an alternative if we have to clean one or do something along that line.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for both Scott and both of you. I'm sorry, I'm
Leslie.
Councilman Hartle. But, as a native, when the explosion kicked off after the freezes in 83 and 85, historically, one of our neighbors, Claremont, has more often than not never met their consumptive use. They've always been over it until this new Central Florida initiative came in. They always just said, we need more water, and St. John said, sure, you got it. Boom. That stopped. So I'm curious as to what Claremont, with their explosive growth, what are they doing? Have any plans? Have you guys analyzed any of our neighbors, or shall we say competitors, for water? Because this is coming down to water wars. In the 70s, we had the same thing. Those who weren't here, in the 70s, there was a big push that Tampa, Hillsborough County wanted to come up St. John's River, and they said, man, we want to suck that swamp dry. We need the water. And the state said, you're not. But now we're back to it, and it's like Central Florida has exploded in water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. But that is a thing that will probably be coming up within all of our lifetime. Who owns the water and how?
Yeah. Around the state, many of the municipalities are putting in lower aquifer wells. So there is, to use the vernacular they use in the West, a race to the bottom.
Yes.
So it's already starting. It's already there.
I see personally that they will cut that off at some point.
They
and say
probably
no
will.
more.
Yes. Yeah. If what you see around the rest of the U.S. is any indication,
Yes.
they will.
Well, with my background, Southwest water management, you get down Dade, Broward counties, it's becoming, and I know Fort Pierce area, St. John's Water is a recapture of water. They're doing water storage, is building their own lagoons, shall say, 1,000 acres or so to take the swamp water and divert it. And they've got a diversion system for storm water that goes in through there, and it perks and all that good stuff. Well, that's great for them on flatwoods, but it ain't working for us, because like you said, our soil type, you put it and it's gone.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, a lot of them are, you see up and down 75 and 95, they're drilling while they can, and it's kind of a good indication. I mean, they're putting 24-inch and bigger 30-inch wells down there. That's a lot of water, a lot of water.
And we can justify, the way from my thinking, the way we justify it through the grant process is it's providing system reliability for you. So it's adding redundancy. You're not dependent on a single aquifer system, and it just gives you a more reliable water supply.
And I'm throwing off on a little tangent, and when I was in Colorado, I saw this happening, and I really appreciate Mayor Joe, who's really big on making these relationships with our communities. That's something he's worked hard as your mayor, just because I go to these meetings with him a lot, and I've gone to these meetings, but there's such a golden opportunity, and probably could get a grant, is where we have all these communities now, because of growth, are touching each other. So, we touch Claremont, we touch Mineola, Claremont touches Oakland, they touch Howie, and you start looking at these communities, and the ability for a interconnect line between these communities. So if, let's say, like right now, we got 1 million gallons of leftover CUP, and Claremont's struggling for whatever reason because something happened, they had a lot of irrigation, that, you know, we could turn around and sell that water to them at wholesale, or we'll have a credit, and if we need it, they can turn that, or we could pump it through them, through Oakland. There's such an opportunity that would really, I think, help down the road that I think cities will start looking at, and as we have our manager meetings, that's something I'll kind of encourage them to think of, and I know Woodward Kearns, their engineer for a lot of these cities, that's something they could maybe bring up and start looking for grants, because if you're going over and you have a problem, that could be a temporary solution to utilize your neighbor, especially if they have excess water. Why not take advantage of it to support South Lake County? So just throw that out. That's just something we'll look at in the future.
In their St. John's formulations, do they calculate for wet year, dry years? Because there's been times we've had 3-4 year dry years where rainfall hasn't met what expected. So you're going to get definitely spikes in consumption for non-potable reasons. Has that been formulated, or is there a cushion to figure what happens when the rain don't come?
No, they use average annual for all their calculations, and when they look at what your past GPCD is and past water usage is relative to what you're asking for, they only look at the last 5 years. Doesn't mean you can't present, you know, the last 10 years. It's just that's what their forms allow you to input.
I hear that. It's like, we had a wet year. That's really great. They're not basing the last 5 years, including would be, we had severe drought, you know.
Yeah.
How do you base that wet, dry, and come up with a solution? Yeah.
So council, if you are okay, I think what Scott and I just wanted to affirm before we start putting it together, we would like to leave both of those options that we talked about, the surface water and the LFA, as a part of our CUP as an alternative, that we'll work toward either or of those or some form of those in the future as we move forward. So we can just leave both option doors open.
I got a couple questions since we have this talent here.
Yeah.
What happens if we go over? What's the state do if we go over?
You mean if you go over your CUP? So one possibility is that you, well, because there's several different possibilities.
Worst case.
The worst case scenario is if you consistently use more than your CUP, then there's usually fines associated with it.
$5? How much?
Probably a lot. I don't know for certain, but I'm going to guess.
Well, we got a good lawyer.
That's where they're, you know, that's their stick, right?
6 digits and up. Yeah.
Enough to make us not want to do it again.
Yeah. Now, if you have a blip, it's a super dry period several years in a row, and you happen to go over, but then you come back down. There's flexibility in that, and that's why they use the annual average. Is it accounts for kind of those highs and lows, right?
Have you seen cities go over 3, 4, 5 times and not be fined?
Honestly, I've not looked.
Good. Mayor Joe, just to add a little bit to that, what we have seen is and the accounting for a consumptive use permit is an annual total. So they'll look at it on a monthly basis in terms of how much of your application for the year have you spent so far, and can track whether you're moving towards an exceedance or not. More often than not, they will intervene and want to see you in-house with another consumptive use permit application to justify either raising it because you need it, or at least providing them the information so they can give you, so they can come back to you and say, well, you're using too much, and here's what we see, and these are things that we expect you to do.
Yep. And
I haven't seen it come to fines too much, because usually that's the process that plays out.
And I will mention the EN50s that I was just mentioning. Those are monthly reports that you send to St. John's with, this is how much water we extracted, and it's so they are tracking on a month-to-month basis. I actually just did email them and said, hey, can you send me 2024's EN50 report, and they'll pull it down. So they're looking at it. And then there's also expectations, and I want to mention it relative to the conservation programming, is they are really stepping up on conservation. They've been they've got some new conservation coordinators at the water management district level. They're really pushing, they're really pushing conservation planning. And that can be, a combination of passive, where we have, in the water codes, like, the water sense low flow toilets or just water efficient washing machines, things of that nature. They're looking for programming as well as where you're doing outreach to the neighbors, you know, don't run the faucet while you brush your teeth, that kind of a thing, starting kind of at the low levels. Pointing people to where they can get information on water-wise gardening, pointing to like the University of Florida extensions and things like that. And so there's an expectation too that you will be implementing these water conservation plans. And for you guys, we kept it kind of pretty high level. I think the biggest lift is adding a web page to your website with conservation information, and that's an easy thing to do. You can look at your neighbors. Go on to Claremont's. That's what go check and see what everybody else is doing. A lot of them are just links to DEP sites as well as the University of Florida sites. So yeah, that's the big lift that we have in for you. Besides doing kind of instead of safety minutes, like a water-wise minute kind of thing at the start of your council meetings, you know, or doing it once a month in a newsletter or something of that nature. So really more outreach things. But there is kind of this expectation that you will also make an effort to conserve water. So I'm just going to throw that out there as well.
Scott mentioned, well, let me do it this way. We're reporting what we pump. What numbers that come from? Is that out of our well, or is that what we bill? How do we come with the number that we're sending to them?
It's from the meters that are on your wells. Because you remember one of the things I pointed out we sent to them were meter certifications. So all of your wells have meters on them, and the meters are certified periodically to make sure that they're still calibrated. And then the readings are what gets recorded and sent to St. John's.
And that's our outside vendor that does that, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we have a master meter on both wells, and yes, our outside meter reads those and reports those. Then as we've done the CUP, then they actually ask for our meter, the individual house meters
Right.
for those reports as well, but they just do that as a part of the CUP.
But there's a big miss between what we pump and what we bill.
There is.
Exactly. And that includes what we call, we refer to it as unaccounted for water.
That's like the town's water, using water.
Yeah,
You
so
don't bill
we have all these buckets of water, right? We have your residential water, we have your commercial water, and in your case, you have in-town residential and out-of-town residential. So the out-of-town are the ones that get the Oakland water. Same thing for commercial. But then you have your hydrant water, which is the water that is being purchased by the developers. You have the 5 meters that are on your the 5 parks that you have that are metered. And then as we go through and we add all this up, all those meters, we look at that relative to what you said you pumped at your master meters on your wells. And then that difference goes into this category of unaccounted for water. And that can be drift in your meters, that can be system losses like leaky pipes, things of that nature. Sometimes it can be something as simple as, well, we had a big pipe burst and we lost this amount of gallons, you know, so that kind of thing. So there's an accounting that happens, like it's like accounting books, right? You know, where you reconcile your account, your checking account with same sort of thing. You're reconciling what you said you're pumping out of the wells and what you're delivering, and then figuring out what's in the middle.
And they count, I think it's 15%. Don't they give you a percentage? I want to say it's 15 or 20 for that unaccounted water is kind of
Yeah.
okay before they start telling you to do something about it.
Yeah, nationally it's around 10 to 12%. Usually if it gets up, you know, they'll let you get up like around 15. If you go up higher than that, then they're going to be like, you need to start doing some repairs to your water system. You figure out where your leaks are and fix it.
What's our percentage? Do you know?
I think I was coming up with, I want to say like around 10%.
Yeah, it seems like it was 10 or 11. We were
Yeah,
in around.
I'm trying to remember.
And we really don't have anything to trace that to as far as costs. I mean, it could be a leaky pipe, it could be this, or
I mean, everything from hydrants that may have turned on to, you know, we have some old parts of town. I mean, occasionally we have found some houses over the last 3 years that didn't have meters on them for this entire time they existed in Montverde. So we've been trying to find those as we've gone through the system. I've been Public Works. Occasionally, if a meter head could be broken, for instance, and there was something wrong on that end, we've had the developers, you know, we've probably issued $20,000 in fines for they took the meter off and hooked the hose to it, and we catch them, and it's, you know, sorry guys, $500 a day, thank you. So that's, you know,
Yeah.
so those kind of things, you know, kind of eat the water up.
Like 6, 7 years ago, what our problem was we were pumping 1 million gallons and billing 600,000. That's what, when we changed all 600 something meters in town, and it knocked it way up there then, what we pumped and what we billed. But it was still a problem, but I didn't know what an acceptable miss is. 15% is an acceptable miss?
It's a little bit on the high side. I think national
10 or
average
11
is,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you guys are, national average, I think something along the lines of 10 to 12%. And I think you fall definitely within the national average when I looked.
Okay, the other thing I have is a 4-inch well metered? If somebody puts one in, do they need anything to put a 4-inch well in? I've always been told no.
That's
You can
correct.
just, so anybody can drill 10 4-inch wells with no permits?
We were just talking
Except
about
for a
that.
city.
Yeah, it's.
Am I right?
You're right.
Okay,
And
yeah.
Frustrating.
I've mentioned this to the person we're working with over at St. John's, and they acknowledge that that is a flaw of their current regulations, is that they're, it's like death by a million cuts, right? They recognize that they're not regulating all these small individual wells that are going in, and cumulatively, they're a large fraction of the water.
And I got one last question.
Yes.
Let's say we get our CUP for 20 years, right? That's going to almost 4,000 people, and we're only, I don't know, we're not nowhere near that right now. Can we sell that difference to Niagara and water trucks?
That's a good question. You would have to report that it will show up in your water audit, because you will still have to do a water audit, and that basically tracks what you're pumping and where it's going. Now, whether or not they consider that to be acceptable, I mean, helping out your neighbor, I think, is one thing. Commercial
I mean,
water.
if we would meter them, they're in our 180 districts, I
Yeah.
think I would meter them as an industrial customer.
So,
Yeah,
okay,
so as long as they're metered like
Yeah,
that,
if
you're
they're
fine.
If they're metered, we're fine.
if what?
If they're metered, we're fine. We could do that, yes.
What's
Yeah.
metered? What do
They
you
have a
mean?
meter. We're just
In other
tracking
words,
the
if
meter.
they had a bottling plant in Montverde, then you would put a meter on the
Oh.
lateral that would
No,
come into their
No,
system.
I want to sell it like they do down the road here to the truck and truck it over there and get paid for it.
Oh, well, so that would be through your hydrants. So
Yeah.
you would do the same sort of thing you do with developers, which is you give them a meter and it goes on the hydrant,
Yeah,
or a line at your treatment plant, wherever you want. But the water needs to go through a meter into the truck, and then they would get billed for that water.
Right, so what I'm asking is, we 40% of our water, we put it in trucks and sell it to Niagara, and we make money, and then we credit back our residents on their water bill. Until we build too many houses, have too many people, and we can't do it no more. I don't know, the CUP,
It's a good question. I don't know if they would, I don't know if the Water Management District would look at that and go, okay, well, you said you were going to pump this when your population was at build out, but you're still 2,000 under in terms of population, and yet you're pumping full amount.
Yeah, that would be what we'd have to look at, because you're allowed a certain percentage for commercial, but if you get to the point you're pumping 250 gallons per day per household versus the 115 is what you're allowed. So there would be a
Yeah.
balance there. We could do some of it, but we may have to go in and
well,
do
how do
some
we find
further.
out if we can do it or not, though?
Well, one of the things that is written into the state code is, and I think it's pretty, I've never worked in a state where it's not true. The water is owned by the state. It's a public trust doctrine, right? And that you are, through this permitting application, you are putting the water to beneficial use. In other words, you're using it in a way that is constructive, supporting the people of Florida. Now, whether or not, so if that were a commercial industry that were supporting your town, then yeah.
Well, we're
you know.
selling the water to people in Florida, and we're benefiting people in Florida.
Yeah. That you'd have to ask them, honestly. I don't know if that would raise red flags with them or not.
I don't know if our attorney would agree with all
I
that.
was just thinking the same thing. I wonder what.
I mean,
went through your mind.
if Niagara had an interest, we could look into it and find a way, because, right now, I mean, if you look back, what, last year, I sold $30,000 to $40,000 worth of water to the developers with the big trucks, and this year we're probably 20+ thousand into it and still adding. So I sell bulk water all the time.
Right.
I meter it, but I do sell the bulk water.
Well, it took me a year to get the Niagara trucks not to come through Montverde.
Yeah.
So now they're going all the way around. They're really nice about it. And we did that 10 years ago too, whoever can remember that. And I'm looking at these trucks and talking to the guy, running out of Jacksonville, thinking to myself, well, if you're going to come through our town, why don't we just do it? And we'll pay you guys, and we'll set up a place you fill up. And he's like, well, yeah, we truck it for you. I'm like, okay. And I never got a chance to talk to Anita about it, though, and I just remembered it.
Yeah, we'll have to, because they actually have their own CUP to pump, and so they're pumping at a very wholesale price. So we would just have to look to see, that cost, what it's worth. From a money-wise,
The
I would just
product's
say,
free.
yeah, it's true. Looking for opportunities in our 180 district, because on the retail side,
No, but then
obviously
you got
will
to
get
pipe
some
it.
more.
I just want to put it
That's
in a
true.
truck
Yeah.
and sell it.
Gotcha.
Okay, just for the heck of it. Okay, and how do we feel in this room about fluoride since it's on the news today in our water? I wanted to ask everybody how they felt about their fluoride in their water. I don't know the pros and cons, that's why I'm asking.
The orchestra I play in has a retired dentist, and he's fighting the city of Leesburg. They did this about 15 years ago. The science doesn't, it's going to be, he says, no, the benefits outweigh the minor things that go wrong with it.
Well, Leesburg was on the news tonight,
Yeah.
and they're stopped their fluoride, and I'm like, really? Isn't that like we're England when nobody has teeth and stuff?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah. So council, just so you're aware, we only put 2 products in our finished water, and that's an anti-scalant, which is required for galvanized pipes that are out there to kind of keep the stuff from breaking off in the pipes. Then I forgot the technical name, but chlorine, basically 10% bleach, and for disinfectant.
And fluoride.
No fluoride. We don't put fluoride in our
We
water.
don't?
No.
Oh.
We put chlorine and
Well,
anti-scalant.
And just out of curiosity, is that distributed a little bit over the course of time, or it's kind of like your pool pump or whatever, you wait for it to get to a certain level and then, okay, I got to go throw some more salt into it? Or
No,
whatever?
it's actually when the pumps come on, it's semi-computerized. So we have little valves that pump it out of the tank. We got like a 250-gallon chlorine tank, and as the water's being pumped, it puts it into the system. And then there's also the process, it does it as it's pumping because it needs contact time. So as it fills in the tank, because for chlorine to be effective, or bleach to be effective, basically, it needs time to work through. So when we measure, what we look for is what's called the free chlorine or the residual chlorine. So we always want to make sure there's enough left over. If something did happen, it would take care of that bacteria, and we do that according to our DEP permit. So yeah, it's done at the time of pumping, and it tastes overly chlorinated, where like some cities you go to, you feel like you're drinking a swimming pool. And because of the location of our pumps, they're really in a great spot for town. We have a smaller system, so we don't have to put the high doses of chlorine, because on your system you test really from the furthest line from where it's put into, because that's where it counts, and where you got to have that residual chlorine at. And luckily we're so centralized, we don't have those long runs like say a Claremont or something would, where you got miles and miles. So you got to have it strong center city, so there's a little bit left at the end.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, just an FYI, for technical reasons, we aren't really using chlorine gas, which was the big thing, because when chlorine gas leaks out, the neighborhoods don't wake up the following morning. So the chlorine that we're using is a granular.
So for the history of the town, we've always used chlorine gas, and after coming here and again visiting with Mayor, and we talked about it, we went over to a liquefied chlorine system, liquid chlorine, just for the safety of our public works employees, mainly because they don't have the proper OSHA to deal with the training to deal with all the gas that we were dealing with. So yeah, we got a good system, and we got backup pumps and pumps, and it's checked daily.
Basically, when a chlorine gas leaks and there's a gas mass hanging there, by the time your arm reaches out, you're dead. So that's kind of a nasty thing.
Does every city have the same renewals? Like we're going to renew what, every 20 years?
The typical period is 20, but you can also go in and ask for a shorter period if you want,
Why
or
would
they
you?
can also choose to give you a shorter period. And so that would be something that, you know, one potential, I don't know, one possibility is we go in and say that all this growth is going to happen in 10 years. And then they'll say, okay, we'll give you a 10-year CUP, and then we want to check back in and see where your growth is relative to your projection. But we're going in asking for the maximum in many different ways. So we want the full 20 years, and we're going in, when we look at our projections, we're going in on the conservative side. Because again, as Paul pointed out, it's better to ask for more and get more and not use it.
What would be the average cost to do a renewal of CUP?
It just varies on how much, it varies on the water management district and how much they go back and forth
I
with
mean,
you
for
on it.
us, you know, roundabout for a little tiny 2-square-mile town,
Goodness, we,
25,000?
Oh, no, we budget I think we approved, what, 120,000, am I thinking?
I mean, if I remember right, the task order that we had was just under 100 maybe, but it really, it comes
Yeah.
down to like filling out the paperwork. I mean, Leslie just went through everything that's required, but the variability in that is entirely up to how much the water management district comes back and says you need to do and what additional work there
Right.
is. So, you know, an average might not mean much, and I'm not even sure I could give you one anyway under the
Well,
current conditions, just because they're so
Say it's
new.
100,
Yeah.
and we do it every 20 years, that's good. So, so that's why we would want to obviously
Yeah.
go for high numbers.
well, and the other thing to be cognizant of as well is that if and when you put in your new wells, you're going to have to update your CUP again, because you have to put the new wells into that. Now, at that point, hopefully things won't have changed significantly, and it should be a much faster turnaround, because it's just say, you know, we're adding in this alternative water supply and makes your numbers look better. So, but you will have to redo your CUP or update your CUP
Well,
once the new wells are in.
You just reminded me, now we have the well that's up in Hills of Montverde.
We don't, no, they're hooked directly to our current system. So there is a well there, but it's not hooked to anything.
But they did, well, we didn't hook it up, but there's a well there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just might be just a 6-inch well.
Okay.
It's
And
a-
and it doesn't have a CUP allocation.
But
Okay,
this
that's
does
what
go
I'm getting
back
at.
to one of the earlier points where we were talking about kind of next steps, and one question was what to do with the developers' wells, because technically right now, you don't own the wells?
We do own all the wells.
Oh, you
You
do all
do,
the, okay,
yeah.
so when they put in the next ones, until the wells become yours, this is where we've been kind of going back and forth with the water management district, because they're saying, okay, when Osgood goes in, they're going to be putting in a well. So we want you to put that in the CUP. And it's like, well, we don't have the well right now. And they're like, well, we can have you redo your CUP when you do get the well. You know, so it's this negotiation that we're doing with them.
But that's just like an ace in the hole, right? Up the one up on the Hills of Mineola, I mean.
Or the Hills of Montverde.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's
it's just sitting there dormant.
It's just, that one will sit there dormant, yeah. So we won't even include that because they didn't put separate irrigation meters in because Lake County doesn't require it. And so we can't require it even though we're providing water because they got to use
Right.
their development code and not the towns.
But what I'm getting at is if something happened, we needed it, we could pipe it to our water system and turn it, and put the pump on it and pump.
No, because we would have to have it included in our DEP permit for the permit, because we'd have to have it be able to chlorinate it and have a system there. So it wouldn't be as easy turning on. There would be a possibility we could work to get that turned on.
No,
But
all that equipment's coming down here, right? That they're gave to
yeah,
us?
we have all the equipment will be down here. So yeah, it's just a well. So we will, we are building that redundant well, which is actually ready to bid. We're just waiting for the grant facility plan to get finished. So we'll have 3 wells for redundant wells on the system. So, which right now, you're right. If we, it's a little bit scary if our main well goes down, because this one's not enough to pump for what we need for fire flow. So
But again, if something happened desperate, we could
we could
set
look,
it up.
Yeah, I mean, putting that permit may take longer time than actually fixing it depends on what the problem is, but yeah, it's always an option. That's why we own it. We want to own it because it gives us an option down the road if we need it. You're correct on that.
Okay.
I've got a
Thank you.
question for Anita and Paul. The Osgood property, I think that's an 8-inch, maybe it's bigger. I know it's a minimum of an 8-inch well. developers on a situation like the Osgood property, that well is the developer's well until we finish the development agreements and so forth, and then when they start building, that's turned over to the city, or they relinquish it, or how does that work? Or is it work?
We typically ask that if they have a CUP associated with it, that it be turned over to the town.
And my understanding was, I believe I had our engineer look at it,
We
and
did.
the CUP expired on that well, so it.
Yeah, we looked at that.
Because, yeah, we did that.
We were trying to figure out if we could get an offset.
Free water.
So one other option, while Leslie here, we were thinking out of the box the other day, because that brings up a good point, Mr. Hartle, and I had her do a little study, and there still could be a possibility, is we can also look at some farms that are out there that they're no longer irrigating because they sold to a developer, and try to purchase their well. If it has an active CUP, then we can take over. They have to convert it to a municipal use, so you get a lot less than what's the farm. But we could buy this. We could buy the CUP from other wells that are out there doing nothing. So that is something I asked them to look into a little harder to see if we can find some possible wells. You know, because a lot of farmers had these wells, and now they want to sell the land, and they still have a CUP because they had a 10 or 20-year CUP, and we can maybe offer them whatever, say $50,000 for the well and their CUP. And that'd be cheaper than anything we can do on Earth, because then we just buy their water rights, is basically what we're doing.
Yep.
And did I say that correctly,
Yep.
Leslie?
Yeah.
As I was going through that? So that's something we're going to look into and explore as an option too, that we can always enhance our system with and get more CUP.
If you do that, do you have to use that well to pump that water for that CUP, or that CUP can be folded into ours and we can pump that amount of water out of our existing wells?
I'm going to let Leslie answer that one.
I believe you can do this the second, but you have to amend the CUPs. So that's where it becomes a little trickier, because the CUP has what wells are associated with it in the application. So if you were to use that allocation with different wells, then you would have to amend that CUP to include whatever wells you're using.
But Leslie, do those wells usually, they are for your irrigation or non-potable, correct? Or do they flip into your potable water?
So an ag well is, a well is a well, honestly. It's what happens on top. And also typically there's requirements regarding like setbacks from leach lines and things of that nature to protect the quality. So to take an ag well and convert it to a municipal well, at a minimum, you got to make sure it meets the municipal design requirements, that it has all the setbacks and stuff like that. And then after that, it then becomes the wellhead stuff. So it's, can you chlorinate it? And you have to get it into your drinking water system permit.
I think that's it.
All right,
Everybody
awesome.
got it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just the last thing is that we just want to make sure we're at the point we need a little direction. Is everybody okay with pursuing, leaving both options, the LFA and the surface water use? Negotiating those two things within our permits. We got to do something. We're at that point where we're running out of
Yeah.
time.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we'll take a look at options and
Okay.
make some recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The only thing actually that I'd like to see is one that Alan mentioned, is seeing the price difference, the cost difference of the
Sure, yeah.
12 to like 16, just because of what you had mentioned and about other municipalities around us and everything. Just curious on the cost difference.
Most definitely. Yeah, we could do that.
What was the question?
Then I wanted to sort of see the cost difference between a 12-inch well and like 16, like Alan had mentioned, just because of the other municipalities around us.
Oh,
And maybe we could use that to.
you thinking about putting one at your house?
So Scott, if you could maybe get that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean,
At your house.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
at some point, we're going to come up with we're going to evaluate the costs of one option versus the other versus some combination. We'll want to know that before we commit to doing anything, before you guys will commit to doing anything in the permit. So we'll have to do some cost estimating, kind of understand upper and lower bounds and what that'll be.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. It's easier. Part of that alternative water supply study, again, as I mentioned before, we'll be looking at the technical feasibility of it, but we're also going to be looking at the economic feasibility. So we're going to look at what the costs are, because I don't think there's, I'm going to speak out of turn. I can't speak directly for the Water Management District, but I don't think they want you to like triple your water rates or anything like that. So it has to be reasonable.
Just find us a
Mike-
grant.
Well, my
Pass that
thought,
message along.
my thought was it's cheaper now than it is later, and I know Scott can tell you, when you increase the size of a well, a 4-inch moves, you know, the volume, the curve is not a double, it's more of a, like,
Yeah.
so a 12-inch would be like, going to a 16 would be like an original 18-inch well or something. Your volume is just unbelievable. And for that little 2-inch, it makes a lot of water difference. So, but that was my point.
All right, let's keep moving. Thank you very much. Well, Leslie, you want to do the project, stormwater project update?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. In your packets, and I'll go on, I kind of wanted to just, I'm meeting with the Woodward and Kern engineering team tomorrow to really get this facility plan kicked off. This is for the $19 million that we have for the stormwater project, and just want a little bit of direction. I kind of highlighted 3 projects I'd like to get started on. And as I mentioned to you, time is a little bit of the issue because we got to 2027, I think, to expend these funds. So we also have other money, roughly $5 million for other stormwater projects that we're working on as well. But the goal kind of this for this 19 is really to do bigger is better, just because bidding it out and the time it's going to take to engineer it, we want to get larger chunks of money out so we don't risk losing the money. So first project, which you have in your packet, I have up on your board, want to talk about, see if get some comments. We've talked about this in the past. This would be a complete street stormwater project where we look at all of 455 and up around the water tower, get all that water collected. If you go down from Ridgewood, we have that big ditch on the side of the road that kind of just, everything kind of goes to one drain where we can collect that, possibly some curb and gutter and sidewalk system along the way. We've talked about we can use some creative stormwater collecting techniques by putting some center islands in there to kind of collect from an inverted road, which would also help with our traffic situation going forward. As you go 455, as you make the turn from downtown and go out, we have some great possibilities there because we own the land on both sides of the trail, the town does, you know, along with county, that we can create some great storm water detention ponds there. Currently, during a heavy rain event, it all goes through a pipe and dumps into Lake Florence without any type of filtration whatsoever and with great magnitude. So there's, it's usually pretty turbulent water. So we'd have an opportunity to go down that street and collect that as well. Also, I met with Commissioner Parks and Jennifer Barker at the county, and with Fred, and since this is kind of would be in the county project, they are very open to committing Lake County impact fee funds. I'm looking at this as a larger project for left turn lanes for Montverde Academy. They said we could definitely start at $250,000 and probably could go up to another $500,000 possibly. And Fred would like to see a left turn lane on, I'm sorry, I always forget that street. Is it Highland that goes up to the water tank there? I always forget. What street do you live on? Going up to your road. Is that Highland that runs along Academy right there?
Highland.
Highland. He would like to see a left turn lane for Highland coming as you're coming from the roundabout, then a left turn lane into Academy Lane where we have all the problems. And we can also look at another left, possibly even center lane all the way down the Academy. As you know, that's a lot of the tie up as cars, one car wants to make a turn, it ties it up, makes a huge traffic. And that is impacts from traffic growth from both Academy and within town and within the area. So we could possibly pull some funds into that. Also, Woodward and Kern assisted and worked. We just put in today, or actually I guess last week, a legislative appropriation for some money to improve the sidewalk and the crosswalk situation around Montverde Academy, with possibly some better signage, some raised crosswalks in the area, and some sidewalks along that area for stuff that could not be covered by the stormwater grant. or covered by impact fees. So that would be another source of fund. That would be a DOT grant. Then lastly, as a part of this big project, as you recall, we had a developer give us $100,000 at Hills Montverde exactly for some trail system improvements. I've been talking with Montverde Academy, and they're going to come talk to us in next week. They're still willing and open to donate land to get some people off of 455 walking and put a trail system on the backside of the academy along the wetland there. So that's project one. I want to see, that's kind of would be, I guess I would call the primary project, really, to get them rolling on. I want to see if you had comments on that, or if you're on the same feeling I am. That would be a good first project to, you know, get 8-10 million of that 19 out the door.
Where was the retention? I didn't catch that.
There could be several. Obviously, we have the area that there's currently is a detention by the academy right off of Highland, but on 455 between the business district and going up, we own that big grassy area along the trail. We actually own a strip of land on the right-hand side, so it'd be some opportunities to put some swales in there and create some detention around that trail area and through that area.
There's where 10th Street hits 455 where the cows are. That big field there would be a good retention area too. Buy that and make it retention.
We could look, and Scott, if you could look at see if there's any possibility for land purchases as a part of that grant funds, if there is.
Right there, what would you say that is, John? 3 acres, 2 acres? Where 10th Street and 455 meet, 10th Street hits 455, right there where the cow is, next to the blue, that big field. At least 2 or 3 maybe.
And there, real quick, there are some pictures of what some of these center islands along 455 could look like, but they would also be incorporated to be part of the drainage system of the road. Yes.
Okay, let me back up. You had mentioned someone by Fred. Did you say?
Fred's the assistant county manager, and he's the public works director for Lake County.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
We all know Fred.
Yeah, Fred's like a staple of Lake County, so it's like Sean, Fred.
It was Jim Steinberg.
So you're saying left turn lanes on 7th Street there, coming down towards the academy to go left on Highland?
Left on Highland, and mainly the big ones left on Academy Lane. I propose left on Academy Lane, and Fred would like to see us expand it like a 3-lane all the way down, basically. So if people do want to turn left on Highland, which I know is not a lot of people, but he would be encouraged. He says that would help us with the impact fee justification for the credits from the legal side. Let's put it that
There's
way.
not many people on Highland.
No.
To really think about a left, just like throwing that out there. Yeah. So you're talking about a retention pond. So I think if that's going down, so basically straight down Lake Street. Is that what you're saying there? Like, where you go straight down Lake Street?
No.
There already is an existing detention pond at the end of Highland.
All right.
So that's where that would go to, and there is up on the corner by your place there is some detention up in that area too, where some of it's already going there. It's just not. It could be piped a lot better and handled a lot better, because right now some of it goes there and some of it runs off, depends on how heavy the rains are. So there'd be some better opportunities for some better collection in that area to keep the sediment out of Lake Florence.
Yeah, water definitely flies down Lake Street.
Yeah.
When it rains, for sure. Okay.
Well, the school's got a gigantic retention area, Highland and Lake Street right there.
Correct, yeah, and right now some of our surface water already goes there, so we would look at maybe utilizing that or working with them to enhance that maybe a little bit too, going forward. I haven't had that conversation with them, but we also have some land in there that actually Highland goes straight through into that grass, and that's a city street through there. So we have some land in there too. We can do a few things. That's city-owned property.
Whatever the engineers think.
Well, what we want is just make sure that you are okay with these projects. We can kind of get to design, and I need to kind of get them to design the storm so I can get with the county to try to get some impact fee funds, and we're also trying to pull in the state legislation appropriation. Is everybody okay kind of with it? I mean, obviously, we're going to get detail, but I didn't want to provide you $50,000 of detail if in general you're not okay with the project. So this would be project one. Everybody okay with this one?
Yep.
Yeah, like I was gonna
Okay.
ask about the details, it's like this would be.
Well, no. We got to start here to get there, kind of thing. So, and that's what we're going to meet about tomorrow. We got our kickoff meeting for the stormwater facility plan. So, okay, so the next project is over in the Franklin Pond area. I'm sure everybody's been by over in the area there of 8th Street and Cherry in that area as the water comes down. There's some major erosion issues going on in that area. I mean, this is kind of a prime what the stormwater project's for. Again, we have a pretty steep hill coming there off the road. It kind of comes around the corner. If you guys know where Miss Judy Smith lives, the water pours down there. There's a house built at the very bottom there. Actually, the garage floods out when it happens, and so great opportunity to kind of go in there. And the thought is this is perfect timing. Assuming we're going to be asking developers to do a little bit of work on the roads in the future, assuming we get to an agreement on that, this would be an opportunity to bring these projects in together and to deal with the stormwater while we're dealing with the road, widening that needs to happen in that area as well. So this would be project number 2. I just put a general area on your thing that's highlighted. The scope may be a little bit bigger than that when they actually start looking at that, but that would be just kind of that's the highlight of the worst areas. And in fact,
Yeah, Hickory is really bad. I mean, it washes out by the old church there. It starts up the hill on 9th, and it really just, comes on down.
So it sounds like everybody's okay with that
Yeah,
project?
that's fine, yeah.
Okay. Then the third project I was going to have them look at, so remember we're currently doing a stormwater, we're doing Lakeside right now. That's different funds than what we're talking about here. We're also doing First Street, some of Porter, and also Florence Park is being worked on right now as the other grant money we have. I would say that other $5 million we have. This particular, again for the $19 million, is having them investigate areas that are concerned. We have a lot of pipes that have a drain just at the end of the street, and the pipe goes directly into the lake with no filtration, no detention. These would be opportunities for maybe some underground storage where we have right-of-ways, or possibly some baffle boxes like we have on Lowry Road. So there's more than those in town. I just quickly highlighted those, but that would be the next thing would have them look at. It's, because we really need to pull, Lake Apaca was a big sell in some of these fundings that we did, so we want to make sure that we really tackle some of these Lake Apaca areas as well with some type of filtration.
This one right here, where the water comes down the hill, over here.
On what street is that, Mayor?
That's the
That's
first.
455, it
Oh,
comes
yes.
down, across from the big White House.
Correct.
There's, what didn't the county talk about putting one of those boxes in we did on Lowry Road in that area? So because right now it comes on the other side of the road, goes under 455 straight into Lake Florence.
Yeah, so on that first project, we would include that as a part of the first
Yeah.
project.
Okay.
They're going to look and see.
Just making sure.
The boxes are really good for catching kind of big sediment, but they don't get a lot of the smaller sediment out when it's really turbulent. Detention ponds do a little bit of a better job for that, and so it may be a combination of both of those, or maybe even some underground storage before it goes to the lake, where we can have some of it seep through or clean. So that's what I'm going to ask them to do. I'm definitely not going to be a stormwater expert, but that would be the goal. Is that exact water is what we're talking about, Mayor. We'd like to get cleaned up.
Very nice.
Okay. So if everybody's okay, we will kind of start with those 3, and then they're going to add some other ones in the facility plans that they just kind of see that we've talked about in the past. I don't have any specifics, but we want to overload the facility plan just so we got everything in there in case they look at this and say, no, that doesn't work. We want to have plan, da-da-da-da-da. But I think we'll be okay with all these projects. They should meet the scope of,
Hey, Paul,
for what the grants are for.
on the third stormwater project at the end of Porter and 10th Street, down by the park,
Yes.
what is the intent to do there to capture more of that water?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a perfect example because we really don't have land to do anything. That would be a perfect place for one of those stormwater baffle boxes that has a little filtration thing in it. So what we did on, so what we did on Lowry is what we'll do there. Now at Truscott Park, I believe they're designing it with underground storage tanks there to get rid of the detention pond, because during the hurricane, the outlet pipe for the detention pond literally eroded the whole hillside down on there. So we got some big issues going on there.
Well, if you can sneak in a tunnel for the students to cross 455, that would help too.
I like it.
Grand.
Mayor, that's all I have on that.
Yeah,
Unless
it's
anybody's got
just
any
a grant,
questions for me.
grants now, reimbursement tracking.
Oops. Again, this is going back to just, we want to try to create a high level just sheet so you can see what's going on with the different grants. Oops, sorry, I hit the back button, obviously. I don't know if I have a thing on there or not. Nope. I just wanted to see, what I did was the same thing as you had last time, and I apologize, I don't have a sheet on here, but what I did, we added a category that shows you the remaining grant money left available, so you guys can see this is what's out the door, this is what's left. So you got the grant award, then you got the remaining grant of money, then you can the next three just really tell you the status of where that money is. It's either sitting waiting to be reimbursed, it's pending reimbursement approval from DEP, for instance, or we received the money back.
So, I automatically get questions when I was looking at it, and everything adds up to the left column, so you guys realize that. But the Lake County Federal ARPA Fund Sewer, isn't that the 5 million we gave back? 3.6?
The very top one you're looking at, or which one are you looking at?
No, the second
Okay.
the second from the bottom, Lake County Federal ARPA Fund Sewer. We have $5 million awarded, and we got reimbursed 1.153, 483, 42, but you're saying the remaining grant money is 3.8.
Yeah, and we did give that back. I apologize, but it hasn't cleared the bank and reconciled to get put in the spreadsheet by the time we put it in the packet. So you'll see that in the next meeting packet, because we
Okay.
haven't updated the books yet.
I'm just making sure I'm understanding
Yes.
it. Okay.
And just also so you're aware of that, we returned, gotta think back. We haven't returned all of the money to Lake County yet, because we want to make sure we had all the bills finalized. So we returned the original 2.2, and I believe Sandy was working with Woodward and Kern. I think we just got notice that I think we ended up spending 1.7 on the sewer. DEP has agreed to reimburse the town a portion of that, which then will get reimbursed to Lake County, because it's already encumbered for a sewer project, so it has to stay with the sewer project. So we're going to be able to actually give them some more of their money back, which is good for them and makes us look at least a little better with them.
So the other thing that maybe this moves into is go to the big one. The Lake County has $1 million, second one from the top. Remaining money is 281. Pending reimbursements 191, and then submitted is 422. So do we want to put some kind of, this submitted for is 422, 798. Is that multiple submissions or just one?
Yeah, so that's one submission. So
Okay.
literally we had it's big because we kind of had the electrical bill come. We had a couple big $100,000 bills come all at one time to them, and it is a process to submit submissions to them.
Just so we can kind of help understand and manage it, or I'd like to see it managed. I'm trying to figure out how we could put dates on that, like when the money was spent and when the money was submitted.
So if you recall, I have those very detailed spreadsheets that I showed to the council, and they're in Sandy. So I can provide those. Have all the breakdowns of every single invoice, every
Has
check paid
dates.
to the contract, has every single date.
Okay.
So we track it to the T on the details. So we have all that back. Where literally you can
Okay,
walk
that's
into
fine,
the
then I
office.
can look at that.
Yeah, and you can walk in the office any minute and just ask Sandy for those books, and she'll pop them out, and you'll have them there. I mean, they'll always be a month behind, obviously, because Bonnie's we can't even put them in the books so we get the checks cleared and all that kind of stuff.
That's where the MPO got in trouble by not submitting on time.
Correct.
And I'm not getting reimbursed on time. I don't want that to happen to us.
Yeah, so all these particular grants, there's a process that we submit them through, and some of them, honestly, they do take DP ones sometimes take several months from the time we submit, and they want a lot of backup, and we got to wait till we have council checks to submit with them. So, we literally just can't turn them in right away, but they do take some time. Like Lake County, we probably will, I just heard from George, what was it? I think it was end of last week, and everything was approved, so that's been submitted to finance for the check. So we should see that check probably this week or early next week on the library for the 422.
Okay, yeah, it's looking good to me. Anybody else?
All right, we'll start including this with your council packets as we go forward, okay? And then again, if you want to come look at detailed books, please come see me, and I'll pull out the books for you. And I encourage you, you should, as council, come in and look at those once in a while, because that way you can see what's being tracked.
What's that? We do?
Oh, yes, our anniversary.
Oh, yeah, our anniversary. Yeah, we need to get, everybody understand where the money's gonna happen. You wanna explain that, Paul?
Yeah, happy anniversary. So, as you could tell, we have a new town logo for the next year, and I sent that all to you if you can include on your websites. We're gonna start kicking off events here pretty quick and print off advertisements. Hey, is that flag still in my office somewhere that I had folded up? Go find that so you can shut them real quick, Caroline. I've been working with a small team of great people to kind of put some of this stuff together. So we kind of got a schedule. We want to make this really special this year. Some of the things we want to do is obviously add things to our events that we talked about. We want to purchase some swag. We actually want to put some signs up at the roundabout that have our logo on it and replace, just for this year, the signs that are out because they're so bad shape on our entrance signs. And so those are some of the things we want to do. We want to get some shirts for the council. It has our new logo on it this year for our planning and zoning members, some of our revision committee members. I'm going to just lead right into the money part of it because that's what I do as your manager. Nothing too major, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do anything with the 4th of July that I put $9,000 in the budget for 4th of July. We're not going to end up doing anything with that for just practical reasons. So I'm going to I've started utilizing that money's in the events fund anyway for some of our stuff. Real quick. And here. Yeah, let's open that up. So you're going to see these flying all through town pretty soon.
That's the flag, where we put the American flag, that's gonna be on the poles.
On all the poles in town and around town and on our buildings. So that should look.
And we're getting.
Yeah, go ahead and show it up there.
And we're getting 4 signs for the roundabout.
Higher so you guys can all see.
I was going to ask about 4 signs. I wasn't asking.
No?
Yeah, so it's a wonderful special time, but I would like the council to increase our budget by $25,000 for the events for a weekend. We'd like to enhance Montverde a little bit. We talked about for Arbor Day, we want to give out some trees as a part of our celebration, give out a little bit of swag. We want to kind of enhance everything that we do to make it a really special year for the town. So I am going to ask if you guys are okay by increasing by $25K our special events budget for this year, so we can fund that.
Why don't we just cancel Light Up Mount Bird? And use that money?
Montverde, you mean?
No, Light Up Mount Bird.
Oh, sorry. I just said Montverde, I might jump with that one.
The 25K, that doesn't include the 9,000 from 4th of July.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Would that be correct?
Correct, yeah, I want to increase it by 25. Sorry, there's our calendar of events. So yeah, so some of the things we talked about doing is like with this, obviously, so we purchased some things. We're going to purchase some banners that go on the side of the poles for around the parks. We want to hang the flags everywhere. We're going to do a time capsule, 100-year time capsule in the butterfly garden, and put not a tombstone, but a monument. I couldn't think of the right word. A monument on top of it. Mayor, please jump in. We talked about doing some extra things on Montverde Day and making that a little bit special. I mean, that'll come in, most of that's already budget around. There's
been a lot of time being put into all this. And the time capsule's pretty cool. You know what I was thinking? Just throw it out there and get everybody's opinion. We were thinking about putting a time capsule in the butterfly park. And then I got thinking, in 100 years, that'd be kind of, you're taking a big chance that they're going to want to do something there. somebody's gonna wanna tear it up.
That's probably true.
You know what I mean? So I got thinking, maybe we have a grave site that is the time sapling, because it's safe there, because they're not gonna dig up the graveyard. I don't think about it, I'm just throwing it out there. But-
Your tombstone that you wanted.
I know, there we go. Here lieth all the memories of the town, buried on this day.
But it'd be pretty neat, in their 200 years, they're gonna take this out of the ground and see all the stuff that we put in it.
I just hope they don't hit the wrong one when they,
Yeah, we'll put it next to my grave.
You mentioned that, but one thing I haven't seen on our library is usually on most historical buildings, there's a time, 2025. You always put that marble plaque into the side of the
Oh,
building.
yeah.
And I don't
Yeah,
think
you're right.
we haven't done, unless it's to be completed, that's usually something like up towards the front door.
yeah,
Usually
I have something planned for there.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't want to spill the
it's in
beans
the
or
works,
anything.
yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I've just been having trouble finding time to get it all done, so I'm working on
Yeah.
it. Well, is everybody okay with that? I mean, obviously I have to bring a budget amendment before you, but, long story short, I'm at the point I have to stop spending money if you're not okay with that, so I need to kind of keep rolling on it.
Spend it, it's in the same, department, you're fine. You got $150,000. Yeah, I'm fine with it, you guys fine with it?
Okay. So I'll have that budget amendment. I'm also going to be bringing the FEMA budget amendment in one of the next council meetings for that, and just also for the roof that we did. And so you'll see that. Usually I do it at the end of the year, but we've had some pretty big things. So I just want to get the budget up to date so it's easier for us to track internally, since we do have some big increases just from advance. Most of it's getting reimbursed, but we do want to track that. Well, thank you. So yeah, keep your eyes out for a lot of fun stuff. The concert in the park starts this Saturday. So we just sent out postcards to all of our residents, so that'll be coming out. So you'll get a postcard in that. We're going to put some signs up on Thursday to remind everybody of the concert in the park. So that'll be our first concert in the park. It's usually a little bit slower, but please use your skills of Facebook and meeting people and talking, let people know, come join us as a community, come together so we can do that first concert and have a good one. And what's really fun, and I guess I'll talk about this, I forgot about Mayor, our May concert, which May 15th is technically our anniversary, but the May concert, we're going to do it in the afternoon, something different on Saturday, and we're going to do a community-wide picnic to come out and just have fun. And I don't know what that looks like for food yet. It'll probably be the town buying the food, just for health safety reason. Everybody bring it. We thought about everybody bring a side dish and all that. And I was like, well, that could run into a problem. So, but we're going to plan that. It's not going to be like a Montverde thing, but we're going to have some giveaways there. We're just going to have some food there, and the whole thought would be the community just come together, enjoy each other, and celebrate our 100 years, because that will be the actual month of our 100th year. So kind of plan on that. Make sure you're around in May so we can make that rock and roll.
And I was just going to suggest if we could put some kind of a picnic day in there. Just bring your family, hang out in the park, throw your blanket on the ground.
Yeah, I think that's a thought. I mean, we may do like barbecue, or maybe just do gigantic subs everywhere or something like that, and chips, or just something fun, something
A
picnicky,
Guinness
something
Book
afternoon.
of World Record sub for Montverde. There you go. That's 170 foot.
Yeah, and we are going to, on that, we're going to be kicking off this butterfly garden here really quick. And for Arbor Day, we're going to plan we'll get the information out. If the schedule works, I can keep everybody on schedule, we're going to try to have a community-wide volunteer day. And that volunteer day will be at the butterfly garden. And the thought is I'll have 1,000 plants out there and 20 shovels, and we can all work together as a community to plant that butterfly garden, have it in place. Then we'll do a ribbon cutting probably the following month in May, because we'll get everything finalized and cleaned up out there. So fun stuff. I mean, there's lots of there's gonna be a lot of stuff to be announced. We just kind of want to throw a few of those things out there. There's a lot more exciting stuff to come, so we'll be announcing it.
Sounds good. Anybody want to talk to the council?
Paul, a couple of questions. The irrigation on the park, is that completed pretty much?
No.
Still working on it?
Still working on it.
Yeah, okay. The second thought was, I think Florida Department of Agriculture, for Arbor Day used to have, the last couple of years, have had program for free trees that they encourage to give out. I don't know if that's, you want to look into letting them, residents, they bring certain varieties or so, they have a list and you can.
So what we're
get a free
trying to
tree.
do for that is we're in the process, if we can find them, we're having trouble because everybody sold out of live oaks. I was trying to get live oaks, but we're still looking. We want to give away 100 trees for the 100-year anniversary, and we're going to do it is it the April? At the April, I think it was the April, don't quote me on the April concert. So,
Yeah,
so that's our thought, 100 trees for Arbor Day.
April 26th.
And we're trying to buy actually some 1 gallon ones, so they're like 5 foot tall. So, put these little things, everybody mows them over. So we're trying to maybe get a gallon sized tree,
All right.
Any questions?
All right, I make a motion to adjourn, so Anita could go home.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against,
Thank you,
say
guys.
nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah. If you guys get some time next week, give me a holler. I'd love to. John's just been kicking butt with that library over there as far as stuff. I know I walked everybody through there about 2 weeks ago. It's already changed a lot. Mayor got to walk through it this evening, so it's looking great. And thanks, John, again. He's been great to work with, so it's been fun. Yeah, I'm gonna miss him when he goes. So. He's done a great job.